Very pleased to have you here to talk about this evening's topic, which is kind of a unique project that's happening here on campus. Our distinguished visiting artist, Martin Keels, here to talk about his interdisciplinary collaborative project he's been working on alongside of the College of Engineering and with the art department here. So with that, I'm going to kind of give the mic over to Norbert who can kind of explain this evening's interactive discussion.
I'm Norbert Manno. I think most of you know me. So I'm wearing three hats today. So first of all, I've been part of this group that's trying to promote teaching of sustainability on campus, and Marsha has sort of spearheaded that, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years or so. Secondly, I'm also the sponsor of the Distinguished Visiting Artist today, Martin Kyle. And thirdly, I'm also the instructor of COM 530, which is our graduate class in organizational communication with focus on sustainable organizations this semester. So it's a perfect connection there. Today Martin Kyle, our visiting artist, will talk a little bit about this project and about the work that we've been doing on campus and we're planning to do for the rest of the semester, building up to Earth Day, but also beyond. Then Ron will say a few words about, because this is a truly multidisciplinary initiative, so it's communication, art, engineering, the IAP program is represented as well, and so we have quite a few different angles that we'll try to integrate. So Ron will be here talking about art, and we have some representation of engineering. And then after that, unfortunately, Jim Prochaska is not able to join us today. He had some health issues, and he's a health promotion guy, you know. But Colleen Redding will speak instead, and she's actually perfectly suited for this because not only has she worked with Jim and his model and the Cancer Prevention Center for about 20 years, but she's also been part of this sustainability group, and we also have done quite a bit of research on sustainable transportation, so it seems like a perfect match there. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand it off to Martin, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yeah, I hope everyone is enjoying the dessert. It looks very delicious. Good evening. I'm very pleased and I feel very honored to be here at URI this academic year as a distinguished visiting artist. A very special thanks to Marsha for organizing everything, and to my host Norbert Münder for the introduction. My name is Martin Keil. I'm from Berlin, Germany. I'm working in an artist project group with the name Reinigungsgesellschaft. Don't worry, I don't want to give you a German lesson today, but I will a little bit explain what a Reinigungsgesellschaft means. Before I explain the artist practice of Reinigungsgesellschaft, it's seemingly a strange and, in fact, a very long German word. I would like to welcome you all. Reinigungsgesellschaft consists of the two terms, Reinigung and Gesellschaft, whose German implications range from cleaning service to purification society. As an artist, I work together with my partner Henrik Meyer as the co-founder of the artist project group Reinigungsgesellschaft at the intersection between art, science, and social change. In many participative pilot projects and in more than 20 countries, we have worked on site-specific solutions to change living conditions and perspectives for a sustainable future. You would probably ask yourselves what the rep is doing on the washing machine. Has someone an idea? Okay, if not, I will give you a short explanation. The good thing is that the rabbit is not in the washing machine and it's alive. The washing machine is a dialectical symbol of our materialistic and industrialized world, of a high usage of natural resources and energy. This leads to the question if the Western economic model based on free market and economic growth and their executive political systems can solve challenges like the exploitation of natural resources and global warming. Economic growth and prosperity have to reinterpret it, and new growth indicators are necessary for a future-proof development. The sociologist Jeremy Rifkin, for example, says the following, quote, "We need a new economic narrative that can take us into a more equitable and sustainable future." One of the most challenging issues in society is the crisis of the ideology of growth. What awareness can we contribute to a globalized world with increasing ecological, economic, and social changes? I use the term art as an imaginative space, a space to merge different disciplines in finding answers to the ecological, economic, and social crisis we are facing today. This holistic and interdisciplinary examination compares and combines environmental, cultural, social, and economic theories and approaches. A critical analysis of thematic complexes will point differences and common grounds. The projects of Reinigungsgesellschaft makes emancipatory processes aware to all people they include and therefore create the preconditions for social renewal. Reinigungsgesellschaft demonstrates this objective through its name and defines cleaning as a process of renewal. Art praxis becomes a social process and affects diverse areas of life. So we define contemporary art as catalyzer for social and political processes. My starting point working on campus was to analyze the potential of URI. With its rich history and origin as a former agricultural school, the University of Rhode Island offers an ideal institution for facing challenges of the 21st century. For example, interconnections between the colleges of art and science, engineering and environment and life sciences can produce new solutions of challenges to face global warming and environmental protection. With my cultural background, other way around, okay? Thanks. With my cultural background, I'm interested to connect different areas of knowledge, to collaborate with different departments to produce new cognition, forms of corporate working structures, organizations, and forms of shared economy. A holistic problem-based learning in and outside the classroom and practical orientation can give not only students a stronger impact. I figured out that interdisciplinary learning and sharing ideas and facilities is one of the challenges of URI, to think big and what we can do. I'm pleased that the department chair, Dr. Ron Onorato, will introduce the work of the art department after my talk, and he will probably agree that we've initiating a distinguished visiting artist program at URI can help to think bigger. The project Reuse disposable food packaging aims to raise awareness about disposable food and beverage packaging, encourage its avoidance, and to promote the use and reuse of natural resources. The material of disposable food packaging, polypropylene, a fossil fuel product, will be recycled, redesigned, and reproduced into various ways. This interdisciplinary project with the College of Engineering and the Department of Art and Communication Studies is an open process where different skills and knowledge will be explored to understand the complexity of the circle and to convert into a sustainable design. Students learn problem-based approaches inside and outside the classroom. They will develop an understanding of interconnections within this interdisciplinary practice. The project will enrich the discourse about a sustainable campus and help the university pioneer innovative ways to promote conservation, recycling, and the reuse of natural resources. To reach a wide audience and in and outside of campus, and to document the process, I created a blog, reuse.wordpress.com. What kind of plastic do we reuse? We collected polypropylene. What is polypropylene? Polypropylene is a thermoplastic polymer. Its characteristics, its rugged and unusual resistance to many chemical solvents, bases, and acids. Polypropylene is used in a wide variety of applications, including packaging, labeling, textile, stationery, plastic parts, reusable containers of various types. Unfortunately, we cannot reuse all kinds of plastics on campus. Styrofoam and plastic bags, for instance, are very difficult to recycle. Some companies and supermarkets in Europe and recently San Francisco started to ban using one of these materials. Let me give you two regional examples. To reduce plastic bags, the supermarket chain Stop & Shop offers to collect all plastic bags and takes them to the recycling company. Belmonts pay customers 5 cents for each own bag that they bring from home. Many parts of the oceans and rivers are polluted with plastic waste, which endangers fishes and seabirds who eat the plastic waste and die painfully. Microparticles can be found in the food chain in fish that we eat. But let me get back to the process of the project. In the first step, disposable food packaging was collected by students from communication studies on campus. They made campaigns and encouraged also other students to recycle and to reuse plastic. This picture was taken during a reuse meeting at the engineering lab after visiting a sculpture lab at the arts department in the fall term. It was a great experience for all of us to learn from each other and to see the technical facilities. Especially many students showed their interest to work with 3D printing. So we are starting to produce filaments. Filaments is the supply material for 3D printing, and it's cost intensive. So in this way, it's very great way to save money, to reuse the collected plastic, and to produce art. In winter, the collected plastic was cleaned, and in the next step, the plastic was granulated.
There was one snowy day that we had.
A lot of snowy days.
Where did you do that one? Where did you grind?
This was a granulator at the engineering lab.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Thank you.
Because it was not so easy, we figured out that because a lot of material has to be separated because the melting point of this plastic is different. And so we had to make, for instance, to use a lot of PET bottles and take the tops part away and to clean it. And then another technical problem was that the material was too thin for the granulator, but finally
You did.
we could make it, yeah.
You made.
Meanwhile, we have invested in a small machine to extrude filaments for 3D printing. I hope soon we can start to extrude filaments. In April, we can start working on several solutions and artistic transformation as soon the filaments are ready. I'm looking forward to working with sculpture professor Ben Anderson and his students on artistic forms and designs to transform our recycled material. I would like to give you some possible samples. This, for instance, is a sample of some PET bottles. It's in Germany, an installation. They made a herb garden. Another sample is how to work with 3D printing. For instance, we have there are small 3D printers, but you can also produce several parts and then mount it together. So like this sample of this 3D canoe. But also it can be clearly form of free sculpture can be produced like this 3D printed sculpture. Besides the interdisciplinary pilot project we use, I will also enrich a discourse on sustainability on campus. I will focus on sustainability based on the 3-column model proposed by the Brundtland Commission, our common future on the United Nations. The origin of sustainability for the first time appears in 1713 in the book De Silvicultura Economica by Hans Karl von Carlowitz. At this time, mining was very popular in the ore mountains in Germany. Almost all forests disappeared due to a permanent underground mining. Carlowitz proposed a balance to use wood by constantly replanting trees. Sustainable development can only be achieved if environmental, social, and economic goals are implemented simultaneously and with equal priority, as this is the only way to secure and enhance the ecological, economic, and social efficiency of the society. The 3-column model is the basis, and the 3 aspects must intertwine. In this model, the cultural and intercultural aspect is missing and can be a strong additional impact. The model can be further developed with cultural and educational implementations to result in a participative political system. With this 4-column model, I will combine the need to form a sense of responsibility for sustainability, environmental protection, cultural, social, political, and economic transformations. Education can implement and show coherences and effects of ecological and social changes and their long-term effects. In the 21st century, there is an increasing global awareness of the threat posed by the human greenhouse effect, produced largely by forest clearing and the burning of fossil fuel. A broader discourse about environmental challenges, working with different groups, activists, and dedicated citizens, sensitize and motivate people to find their own site-specific solution. Also, I will change the perspective or the perception of different environmental issues, such as the using of natural resources, the use of alternative eco-friendly transportation, exploring local products, and avoiding waste and pollution. Additionally to the reuse project, there will be a series of lectures with the title What Can Be Changed? It will take place on April 9th from 12 to 2:30 p.m. at the Galanti Lounge. I would like to invite you all. The series of lectures will reach a wide audience of students and faculty and show interconnections of today's challenges. In cooperation with Dr. Norbert Mundorf and Masha Garcia, guest lectures will be held with experts from the field of environmental sustainability, health, social justice, culture, business and economics to demonstrate challenges and solutions we are facing today. For those of you who cannot be on campus, there will be a chance to watch the online streaming.
What is the bottom photograph?
Oh, the bottom photograph. Okay, that's an idea.
Solar park.
Solar parking.
That's right,
Yeah.
okay.
So hopefully, in a couple of years, all parking spaces are covered with solar parking.
It's pretty neat.
It will take 3 years to arrive.
Okay.
And there are two to find parking.
All scripts from the speakers will be collected in a time capsule, together with other information, for instance, the United Nations Climate Report and the URI annual report. The time capsule will be buried into the ground during a planting of a Colorado spruce. I hope, is this a Colorado spruce? I took this photo in the morning. But I'm not sure, I was not signed.
I think it's a white spruce.
Okay, okay. So I learned something, a white spruce. Okay.
This is
Yeah.
3.
So this will, tree planting and the time capsule will be on Earth Day. I hope all activities of this pilot project can continue with similar or different resources and cross-disciplinary learning, where interdisciplinary and problem-based learning can face challenges of the 21st century by working and cooperating on site-specific solutions. The practical experience is crucial, as it was enable students to express their own awareness of sustainable impacts. So now I'm at the end of my short lecture, and yeah, thank you, and I wish you all an inspiring evening. And
On Earth Day, we have a few activities planned in addition to the tree planting. There will be something in the evening. We'll get out the information for that. And we also have a poster session where my students will definitely have their posters, but if you have students who are interested in maybe displaying any sustainability-related work, this will be also at in the Galante Lounge in the evening of April 22nd, which is Earth Day. And finally, before we move on to Ron, I'd like to thank all the sponsors for this event, so which is the Provost's office, which is not represented, but they're with us in spirit. And College of Arts and Sciences, actually, Winnie kept me going. I was ready to give up about a year ago, and here we are. The art department, engineering, and also the Harrington School. Adam Roth is the director of the Harrington School. He's also graciously supported this initiative. And then, actually, I should also, Jeff Plouffe, who didn't even know he was a sponsor, but we made him a sponsor by, he will actually be, Jeff Plouffe is from Housing, URI Housing, and he's also a great supporter of the Sustainability Living Learning Community, which is a new initiative that we started this year, and that sort of coincided with this work, and so he has also supported a number of the things that we're doing, and he's going to provide the food for the Earth Day activities.
And the presentation.
And the presentations, yes. And yeah, he would be a presenter as well. Okay, so
I'm Ron Honorado. I'm the chair of the Art and Art History Department. There is no art department here. It's an Art and Art History Department. And we teach two very different disciplines in the humanities and in the creative arts, studio art. And we're thrilled to have Martin here this year, and we're very lucky that he's been here for an extended period of time. This is the second year of the Distinguished Visiting Artist Program, as many of you know, but last year it was a 2-week, it's conceived as a 2-week residency, but given Martin's particular situation, he was able to be here in the fall semester as well as now, so it's really made a big difference. I want to recall that about 10 or more years ago, when we had a university colloquium on sustainability, I was brought in to discuss how the art department might participate and how we discussed that within the arts. And I told the organizers that we didn't discuss that within the arts, because we didn't. It wasn't part of the dialogue in art. This is going back a few years, but I don't remember the exact year of the colloquium, but maybe some of you remember it. It was a great colloquium, but it really wasn't part of the dialogue in the arts at that point. And I think Martin's doing a terrific job and presented us with a model that's very interesting, but I'm not going to talk so much about the model of sustainability. I'd rather talk to some degree about the model of what Martin has called a sort of interdisciplinary, hands-on approach to learning. That's what intrigues most of us in the arts. We're an experiential department. Our students make things for the most part. The studio art students, who we're mostly talking about here, are very engaged in sort of physical activities in their shops and studios. Ben, I think, was probably one of the first professors outside of engineering that had a 3D printer on campus. Maybe pharmacy did too, to do some molecular models. But we're looking for solutions. I think artists do that a lot. And a lot of people don't realize what we do. Part of that is that we're very peripheralized on campus. Literally, we're peripheralized in terms of where we are. We're peripheralized in terms of we're brutalized, if you will, by our brutalist building. Opaque, you can't see into it. When you go into it, you can't see into the studios. It's really a sort of ridiculous situation in some ways. And also the tradition of the visual arts is that artists in the past, not all artists and not all past, but a long-standing tradition in the last century or two has been that visual artists have worked alone in their studios, and that's still a sort of prime model. We're not like the other arts that are in our building, in fact, and that are also part of the group that brings the Distinguished Visiting Artists onto campus, music and theater, who tend to be much more collaborative out of necessity and out of sort of one of their primary concerns is collaboration. We do have artists who are interested in that, but we don't do it as well. It's not a reflexive way that we think in the visual arts. And the Distinguished Visiting Artist, and particularly Martin this year, has as he suggested in his presentation, as Norbert has suggested in terms of mentioning the various departments that are involved, has done that for us. And we need that. We need to make connections. And Martin has enabled us to sort of make some direct connections internally in terms of other departments, in terms of non-majors, non-art majors who might be exposed to what we were doing. I don't think you showed that, but you also brought some engineering students, over to the art studios as well. So it works in both directions here. I'm not suggesting it's a one-way situation. And that opening up extends to things like opening us up to the world of issues, and whether they're campus-wide issues or statewide issues or national or global issues. The arts want to do that now, but we're in a sort of strange situation in terms of being able to do that. So the Distinguished Visiting Artist series, and again, I call attention to the fact that Martin is doing particularly well this year, really allows us to sort of have that kind of dialogue. It's what he's trying to do here tonight, and bringing us together and just sitting and talking, meeting somebody else from another department, or seeing old friends from other departments. So this is really important. I think, the fact that we've got communication studies, and we've got engineers, and we've got people from DOT, and a whole range of other people here means a great deal in a campus that is very siloed. And one of the solutions we see for this, as Trish knows, is the potential for maybe a new building at some point, and a 2016 bond issue. So if we get on that, we might solve some problems of both sustainability and siloing in terms of some of what I'm talking about here. But Martin's what Martin's providing us with is a model that we should be able to use. I mean, I've been on campus almost 40 years, and we don't do this nearly enough. So I think this provides, at least in the arts, we don't do it. And you're providing us with a model for that, so I thank you for it. And to me, that's the most exciting thing. The sustainability thing is terrific, but that's a case study, if you will, an important one. But I'd like to see us extend that to, it could be almost anything. Last year, the Distinguished Visiting Artist, Francis Whitehead, dealt a little bit with sea level rise. And that, too, is an important issue, obviously. So these are the kinds of things that we want to get to. And we're hoping that it extends in the future beyond the visual arts. We've been lucky to have the first two Distinguished Visiting Artists being the visual arts, but you know, music and theater and film do play a role in this, and we hope to get some candidates in the future for that as well. So far, it's been very successful, and we thank the provost for supporting it. Thanks.
Thank you.
The whole initiative is about change, and I think Mark pointed that out, and others pointed that out. And Colleen is an expert in change. That's her expertise, working with the CPRC behavior change towards initially primarily towards health, but increasingly, health and sustainability is hard to separate. So we're kind of putting on a fight until this afternoon that you're going to be speaking today, but whatever she has to say will be great. So we'll go from here.
Well, I guess I was hoping this could be more of a conversation. Many of you already know about the trans-theoretical model or stages of change model. It's often called that on campus. It was a model of behavior change developed right here by Dr. Prochaska. And some of us have been working on this model applied to various areas, mostly health behavior change for the past 20 to 30 years, really. So there's a lot of empirical support for the model. Basically, in a nutshell, it says that people don't change all at once, they change in stages. And that you can find out what are the most important variables or constructs to assess and intervene on to help them progress to the next stage. So the first stage is pre-contemplation. The next stage is where they're not even thinking, maybe even unaware of the problem. We can all think of climate change deniers or people who are not interested in sustainability for whatever reasons. And it would include all of them. Then there's the people who are thinking about it, contemplators. And of course, you would need to approach or engage with people at different stages differently. And this comes right out of the model. And we have found this repeatedly. So then there's another stage, preparation, which is the next stage, where people are actively involved in changing, trying on new ways of thinking about change to see what fits and what makes sense for them. Action, they've decided on what they're going to do and they're taking steps to make it happen. And then the final stage is maintenance, where they're trying to maintain that change over time. So clearly, although this applies well in the health behavior change area, it also applies to sustainability-related behaviors. And Norbert and I have done a little bit of work, looking at sustainable transportation and applying the model in that area. Jeff Green has also done some work looking at green eating, for example, or more sustainable eating patterns, and looking at people's attitudes and behaviors around that. I just reviewed an article today looking at sustainable purchasing practices within organizations using this model. Another article, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, looking at global leadership development and sort of an organizational framework. So you can think about, as you can see, the model can apply to a whole range of changes. So I think one of the interesting things to think about is, what are the most important ways that we could use this model to better engage, the full audience? Like here at the university, you want students, you want faculty, you want staff at all stages, and you want to engage all of them in this process. So how can we think about things differently? Using the model and perhaps going beyond the model, because it only goes so far. All models do. So that's it in a nutshell. Anybody want to ask or want me to elaborate on any of that?
Are there
The nutshell version.
Are there areas that where it doesn't? I'm just curious. I mean,
That's an
Is
interest.
it change? I mean, or is it change within certain arenas? Is it, you said it works
Well,
for?
it was originally
health.
conceptualized as intentional behavior change, so that's a pretty broad scope. And Jim and others early on developed the model by examining theories of psychotherapy, which of course describe how people change within a therapy context, but it can also apply to self-change and has been applied repeatedly to self-change. So it's both a model for how to help others change and how to help yourself change if you want.
But can it apply to groups versus individuals?
It can and has been applied to groups, yeah, and organizations. In fact, Jim's wife, Jan, has done some work in the area of organizational behavior change. So it's interesting to think about that.
So how can we get URI to change?
Well, that's
Well, what do we want them to do, I guess, is one of the questions. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Do you think it's easier to get people to change their practices that affect the health of the environment or change practices that affect the health of their own bodies?
That's a good question. I'm not sure we know the answer. I think it has to do with how invested they are. What are the benefits and costs for them?
Is it always about cost and benefits?
Costs and benefits turn out to be very important, at least early in the change process when you're trying to engage somebody. But it's not all about that. So once somebody's thinking about changing and engaged in figuring out what makes sense for them, then it can also be about how confident they feel that they can engage in this behavior change. For example, say commuting, say, just as a sustainable transportation or something like that. Does it make sense for them? Are there reasonable infrastructure options that support what they want to do? Here, often, the answer is no, right? There's not that much infrastructure. Yeah, go.
From my work with the model, one of the things, I think initially, it's defining the behavior that you want to change. So initially it was basically like one thing, quit smoking, let's say, stop smoking. It's one behavior. But now I think the trend is going towards what they call multiple behaviors. So if you think about sustainable behavior, it does include transportation, recycling, energy use, water use, etc. And so the question is it better to just focus on one and get hopefully the others will follow along, or do you try to get everything moving along at one pace? So I mean these are questions. I mean I don't have the answers.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
It sounds like it was designed for dyads since it stemmed initially from psychotherapy, and I'm just wondering what it's like to use it in a classroom where you could have an audience composed of people at many different stages. One, how do you diagnose the targets in an audience of that sort? And then two, how do you actually tailor an intervention when you can have so many people at different stages within the audience?
Right. It's a good question. I've seen, the first thing is that just talking about readiness allows you to sort of respect all of the people in the room and where they're at. You know what I mean? Like, often you might have a disagreement between somebody who's really ready to change something or somebody who believes strongly that everybody should do X, for example, and somebody else who's against that or not ready. And simply making that observation can allow for both perspectives to coexist, respectfully. So that's one approach to working in a group with the model. Another approach would be to select people on the basis of their readiness and construct groups of those who are ready, those who are less ready, those who aren't even thinking about it, in order to move along.
To use an instrument to determine readiness, or to just have
Well, there's a whole lot you could say about. We develop all kinds of measures to reflect the main constructs. So stage is one I've talked about a lot, but pros and cons, or benefits and barriers, is another important construct. confidence or self-efficacy is another important construct, and then there's the processes of change, and I won't go into all of them, but essentially, depending on the stage of change of the individual, different strategies are effective for helping them to progress to the next stage. And you know that, right? And we all kind of know this intuitively, because our first thought as educators is to educate people about a problem. And people sort of assume that once people know the extent of the problem, they're going to change. And that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
You need to engage them. You need to get them to feel how the problem affects them personally and what is going to make a difference in their life. And so you have to grab them. What's in it for me? You have to answer that question for them. And that will engage them better. Yeah, go ahead.
So with the grabbing them,
Yeah.
is there a specific measurement tool that you could utilize to ask questions, example, to assess where individuals are so you know what to use to grab them?
Well, yeah, assessing stage of change turns out to be pretty straightforward. We've operationally defined it. So pre-contemplation is not thinking about changing in the next 6 months. Contemplation is thinking about changing in the next 6 months. I'm sorry to stand here and enunciate things like that, but, and then.
Okay, so for
So-
example, students
So
at
it's pretty
URI,
easy to evaluate, yeah.
there are certain students who might think about the future and their future environment. And with sustainability, obviously, this is
Sure.
something that affects their future. But that doesn't provoke them to
Right.
do what needs to be done.
Right, so maybe you have to talk about the personal benefit. For example, it saves them money. They'll have, more money in their savings accounts if they can, do this. Whatever it is we're talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
Probably, I mean, a lot of then our students are aware of these environmental issues, but the challenge is how do we get them from awareness to doing
Actually
something,
something
and then
about it, yeah.
so that's like one of the basically I think that's the most important, the biggest challenge of the
Yeah.
model.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, so I'm thinking of, and I know we probably have
Sarah has a
various initiatives
question.
going on campus, but I don't know what they are. So I apologize for that. But just as we're talking about it, it seems like the residence halls might be an ideal location for some of these kind of interventions.
Yeah.
For example, our living learning communities, just as thought comes to mind. You could even have competitions between different residence halls, but you could probably, identify like some of the things you were just mentioning, Norbert, like maybe you have 5 behaviors that you were, in terms of system, like energy, transportation. As you were discussing, you might make it sort of simplified in terms of 5 behaviors, let's say, and have some fairly simple way of having people sort of self-report on what they're
Yeah.
doing. And then, because I think a lot of students coming in are very interested in this type of issue. And it might be engaging for them.
Yeah.
If they had something that they were working on and it could relate to some of their coursework and stuff. So, I don't know, just a thought that comes to mind of a practical kind of exercise that could take place on campus.
Yes, I just want to, I'm not very familiar with the model you have been describing. And it seems to me it's taking a look at individual level behavior and trying to bring about change from that point. And I'm a sociologist, so I want to throw a sociological perspective into this. But I think that thinking at the level of the individual could also be limiting in terms of bringing about change. I think that one other way to think about it is to consider the community, to consider the potential of peer pressure,
Yes.
to consider the potential of deploying values and reinforcing those values at a community-wide level. And where it's not reduced just to the individual decision-making process, individual change and cost and benefit analysis and incentives, but rather creating a certain kind of culture of sustainability that is engaging the power of the group and the group think and peer pressure and modeling.
Yep.
From a sociological perspective, yes.
Yeah. No, very good points. Very, very good points.
So I think that's where the smoking, I'm thinking I worked a long time ago on some research on anti-smoking, going back maybe more than 20 years. And it involved both regulation and also shaming of people who smoked, right?
That's right.
So that you had the regulations in place that penalized smokers, increased the cost of cigarettes, all kinds of things. But then you had the peer pressure of the shaming.
That's right.
That all of a sudden made smoking an undesirable value in our society, and people then gradually over time, right now it's really difficult to actually find someone who smokes. And it's,
Or will admit it.
Will admit it, right? So it's not a very public thing. So the use, going beyond the individual level to a more community-wide, creating a culture and a social environment for change.
It's interesting that you bring up the topic. I think those are great points, and I totally agree that there's culture of sustainability in this case that we would be very interested in. On the tobacco topic, though, we looked at support for tobacco control policies and education, taxation, things like that, and found a really strong relationship between stage of readiness for change, in the case of smoking, and support for tobacco control policies and education. So there's a strong relationship there too. We need to develop those things in the area of sustainability, and I think that's something we could do here. I think that's a good idea.
Just to kind of tie those two thoughts together, one thing that I think about is incoming students, kind of what you had said, incoming students, with every new class that comes in, you're going to find that the discourse of sustainability is actually, it's going to be part of their upbringing.
Exactly.
So it's the university's responsibility to give them the tools.
Yeah.
So the university needs to have everything in place for them, because it's going to be, as these younger generations get older and enter school, it's just going to be part of their being, this conversation. So it's the university's responsibility to give them the tools and the resources so they can implement them in real life.
Sarah has a question.
Practice their values.
Yeah.
So they can practice their values. They're already going to come in with the values.
I did. I was just going to say that with my case study was to change the attitude perceptions, and Michael just said it. Like, we educate them at the lower levels, give them principles and foundations to work upon that, and then they believe it's a habit. You can't change a perception at 35, but you can at 6. You know what I mean? It's an attitude and a way of living, especially with eating. You're not going to have healthy food if you're not good to the earth globally.
That's interesting. Interesting perspective. I wanted to get back to something Norbert said earlier about multiple behavior change, because sustainability is really a very broad concept, and it includes a lot of pieces. So I think one of the things we can think about as a group is, what are the most important pieces, and are there sort of leading pieces? Like a lot of people who are interested in this topic recycle all the time. That's sort of low-hanging fruit, if you want to think of it that way. However, something like sustainable transportation might be asking a lot more of people.
The other one is sustainable or green or artistic building. The university did lots of green building project, and then we are already in this building. The student faculty can appreciate how sustainable this building is. That I'm sure somebody will consider, but I want to remind that the sustainable and an artistic building should be a big piece of the sustainable.
Well, we do that with LEED certification. I mean,
That's right.
We don't build buildings unless they're at a certain high level. I can't remember if it's the code to platinum, but I have to have at least.
That's right.
And then only silver?
By executive
Yeah, but we do, but at the same time, I want to interrelate with art.
Yes, you're broadening the construct of sustainability, which I like, because it's not just about sustainable for the environment, it's sustainable for us. So supporting us, and supporting our health, supporting our spirits, however you want to think of it, broadly.
It's like basically, the analogy to health would be, if you have a healthy lifestyle, you don't smoke, you exercise, you eat healthy, etc. So it's a number of different things, and so some of them are easier than others, and
Yep.
so it's just like with sustainable behavior. If you can maybe, it's just maybe start with the low-hanging fruit and then bump it up, or start with one difficult behavior and then everything else may seem easier. So it's hard to.
What about, do you see any variation in the sort of stages of life? In other words, age differential in terms of change. So, young people, this is a big one, but are young people more likely to accept that change than people in their
We haven't seen that. There are people who we've looked for age differences across health behavior change, but we haven't seen strong age differences. So the idea that old dogs can't learn new tricks is something that's not really true. It's true that people aren't always ready to change, but no matter what age they are.
Yeah, no, I mean, age as an actual factor.
Yeah.
What are the lessons learned? I mean, did you notice in practice when you're trying to engage people, or others have done that? Is there a certain level of suffering, for example, that needs to be reached before somebody takes public transportation? When you're going to Boston every day and get stuck in traffic jams, then it's more likely that you will, take public transportation.
There's an idea
Big
in
point.
change literature about making people aware of the suffering, as you're talking about, or raising the negative, or raising awareness of the negative aspects of not changing, to try to move people along.
Carrot and stick.
Remind me, in terms of the concept of self-efficacy, is that a universal kind of attribute that the person with a sense of self-efficacy feels good about his or her capabilities across a variety of behaviors, or is it normally behaviorally specific?
I've seen it measured both ways, but what works the best is behavioral specific.
So this is one of the things that I'm thinking about and wrestling with in a way of bringing together that model and this question about scaling it up at a sociological level. Because in organizational change, processes around things like sustainability, you'd want to draw on lessons from social movement theory about how you get people to move from self-directed to bilateral to multilateral participatory processes. And that's a challenge. Someone might feel efficacious, like I can resist this piece of chocolate cake or something, but it's quite different to say, I can speak persuasively to someone to think about something that they're disinclined to engage with. So there's a way in which, I think this sounds like a very useful model. As I listen to it, I think it would be interesting to have students use it in a class on social change, but then how do you get from, I feel efficacious, I feel capable of actually strategizing a mobilization of a sort.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean mobilization literally like thousands in the street, but the term is used to just say, how do you get someone to move from being passive to engaged?
I mean, people have different paths, but I think of the community-based participatory research sort of area as one that sort of fits with what you both are describing, really, and that's really, I think, what we want to build on campus is a sense of community around the sustainability movement, and it seems like in the living learning community we may already be doing that.
I would say one thing in response. Part of the goal of the living learning community sustainability, we started with a small group of 10, and the idea, you can think of them as early adopters. So they are students who come in, as Michael was saying, with some sense that, I like this idea of sustainability. So they're together, they're now going to be trainers who will go out to the RAs in every building, and the RAs will be required to do a program. So very quickly, we're going to take this group of early adopters and have them teach others, who will then be teaching all of the resident students about sustainability. So although we have 6,000 resident students, that's a pretty good sized group that is now starting to become familiar with this, and fairly early on in freshman buildings. So this is something they'll be exposed to every year for the 4 years that they live in the residence halls. And we hope that by the time they leave, that they are more willing to participate in sustainable activities. They appreciate the benefit to them. To some extent, the benefit to society, although I think young people quite often don't look too far beyond themselves. So we're going to explain why this is beneficial to you, and we hope that that then leads to that behavior. And of course, our area of expertise, if you will, is student development. So we think that this is an important area to focus on in terms of helping them develop as individuals.
So this is a question I have. Are there things that you've been able to identify that might be behaviors that students could adopt right now in the residence hall that could become a focus for this sort of communal?
Well, and that's what will be, yeah, that Noresco is a good example. Marcia mentioned Noresco. They're a company who specializes, been retained by the university to help in energy conservation, and it's really a very good program because they say, if we don't do this is what we'll charge you. But if we don't save you more than we charge you, we're not going to charge you more than that.
So what would people do though as a participant?
Well, we have, one of the tags we have now is 5-minute showers, so that we can save on water utilization.
So that's a specific
and heat.
behavior, that's something.
Well, there is, Noresco does do a pre and post survey analysis. They survey all the students at the beginning of the semester, they work on all these programs and different behavior changes, and then at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, I think it's the end of the year, they reassess, and we do notice a very significant increase in a positive attitude about, or at least more awareness of some of the behaviors that we've been trying to enforce. So it's definitely.
Yeah, and the way Noresco works, and we think the LLC, I mean, one issue is source credibility. When I talk to a student, although I have certainly some expertise in certain areas, but when I talk to them about something they're not familiar with, I'm not a very credible source. A student, on the other hand, we have a large customer service center in the Department of Housing. Someone said to me, why, they thought I staffed it with students because I was trying to save money because I was a skinflint. And the truth is, it's not. It's particularly because they are very credible sources of information. When parents talk to a student and they say, I was in a triple room my freshman year and it was great, we did this and we did this, the parent then accepts that. When I try to explain to a parent, look, we know that this will work, they tend not to believe me. So in any case, I think Noresco and the work that they're doing is that they are trying to get some information out to students. We do it with RAs, but it's marginally successful. The goal of the Sustainability LLC is to use those students who are credible to go to other students, the RAs who are credible, and to then reach the students through other students. And we think that's the best model to help encourage sustainable behaviors.
One thing that we talk about is educating and getting the community involved. And I can speak from personal experience at my company. One of the projects that I do for Dr. Mundorf was about sustainability. So I worked for BARD in Warwick, Rhode Island. And I was amazed at how many sustainable programs were ongoing in my company I knew nothing about.
Yes, that's right.
And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is you talk about you have LEED certified buildings. How many students know that? There may be a plaque there, but do they understand what that means? Right. When you make improvements in the cafeteria, maybe there's a symbol that the art department could create in every building or service or facility uses that to explain what have we done this year. And it kind of ties all of the communities. You see it in every building. It keeps the conversation going. And maybe each department could take on a different sustainable project each year. They don't have to be the same ones, but then it's a conversation that's campus-wide that the students are sharing. What are you doing in your group? And oh, this is what we're doing there.
I know you want to speak to that. Marcia's been involved in a lot of these efforts.
We've been trying for a very long time to get something going. So, we can have the greenest building in the world, but if it's not communicated to the students, then not only is it a missed opportunity for learning, but maybe they're not helping us to continue it being green. If you can't have a green building and then use non-green products to clean it, for example. So if that janitorial staff doesn't know that, then, we've completely lost sight of the goal of having a building like that. So we are working on, we should have it up, I think probably at the end of this semester. Hillside is our first building that we'll be piloting to have interpretive signage up. So it's going to maybe 5 or 6 different features of the building that we'll have for 5 buildings eventually to help students understand where they're living or where they're learning. We'll have QR codes on them so they can actually do a self-guided tour of the entire campus if they'd like to, and try to make it a little bit more interactive so it's not just a lecturing,
Yes.
static
Yes.
conversation. It can be more dynamic and they can be on their own time learning
That's a
about
great idea.
buildings.
One thing that I think is very important to do, and again, it has to do with making it part of the culture, is that students that come here for 4 years, for 6 years, they're in university is a bubble. So you really have to make it kind of a larger conversation, like you said, about the rest of your life. Because when you leave here, it's so easy to kind of leave things behind. So in order to really make it, something, to make the idea itself sustainable, you have to kind of really tie it into when you leave here the rest of your life kind of situation. Because it's good to promote something for 4 years, but then when you walk out of the gate, 80% of them could forget it.
Well, I think the pedagogical approach that we use typically in class is that we're teaching with the idea that you go out and practice it. But that doesn't always happen. When we test, the idea is that you teach something and now I want you to show me that you can actually use this. So we have an internship that we put together. Again, it starts with a small group, but the idea of the internship is that you're getting an experiential education. You're taking what you learn in Norwood Sustainability class, which all the students have to take, by the way, so they are getting theory. And then they have an internship that they will use. We're going to give them some flexibility on that, but we will direct them so we know that they're getting the right kind of learning. But they will then see that in practice. And again, we hope it's a small group. We hope it will grow. But the idea will be you'll learn the theory, then you're going to implement it while you're in the living and learning community. It's a year-long program, so that by the time you leave, even if you leave after 1 year, you will have learned something and implemented it. And we hope that will carry forward.
One big part of the process is that Colin mentioned earlier is social support, and that's one that cuts through all the stages. So that's important. And so you can actually see there are certain topics that sort of catch the students' imagination more than others. One is, for instance, food waste. So that's sort of come up in the last couple of years because of in the societal discussion, etc. And that's something that they can actually visualize, etc. And so I've gotten a lot of students that latch onto that. Where let's say energy is a little less tangible, and that's that's a little. So you have to find a balance between what's a really important topic, which food waste is, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of the whole food system, which is messed up for me. I don't want to talk about that, but so I think that it's a way to get the students engaged. And they get one piece of it, and then they start thinking about where does the food come from. They start thinking about organic eating and local food and all that. So sort of, if you're lucky, there will be a ripple effect, and the students will influence each other.
Can I ask Martin, as the sort of person from outside the campus who's come onto the campus, what have your perceptions been in terms of this issue of accepting change on the campus, or with students or with faculty?
Well, I think that's good that you mentioned both groups. I think that's maybe that some of you mentioned already that students are here for a short term of time, maybe 4 years, and it's not easy when they are coming maybe from ephemeral backgrounds which are not introduced in sustainable change, and I think it's not easy for a university to demonstrate and also to force. To force maybe is the wrong word, but to show, to raise attention, awareness about several criteria of change. But what I think it's maybe we are talking too much about over students, but we should ask our students because maybe the students are smarter than we are. And this is the point maybe what you were saying about the community. I think it's not saying that we are defining some laws and structures, but we don't know if this structure will be there in 1 or 2 years. I think the best would be to use to build several experiments with students. Let's learn together. And let's grow organically, and that's my observation.
There's something nice about the tree, though, too, because it extends what is normal. I think you said it, students sometimes have a very short range of thinking and time span, and you know, to get them out of that, something like even just the fact that it's not a time capsule. If I read that right, it's not a time capsule that will be open in 100 years. It's going to be open whenever the tree says it'll be open. So I mean, that obviously extends it into some unknown.
I think we have to widen up our imagination. And we don't have to be so strict to say, well, what we can change now, and let's make next year an assessment. It's fine, that's great. We can do this, but it's a tool, and but we should think a little bit further.
Yeah, I think some of our struggles are reflecting social struggles. Like, I think as a society, we're thinking about what are the most important targets for sustainability efforts, and there's struggles about that, right? Because, I mean, green eating, for example, I mean, because I know there's been a movement towards eating more locally sourced, sustainable produce, for example, on campus. But, I mean, some people want to eat organic, don't want to eat meat, you know, then, you know, what makes more sense, you know? And it's very unclear sometimes. What is the most sustainable choice?
I think it's good, you know, like it's good struggle for change in the future.
That's right.
So I think that the sustainability, we need to work on, keep working on that.
That's right.
I was thinking like when I look at the Professor Mike Rice, you know, one idea will be maybe we can have fish farming in sustainable building.
Or nearby in the bay.
Yeah,
We've already got oyster farming, right?
Or something like that.
Fish farming.
So that's all idea and the elements I think Masha will put together with the note.
But maybe another thing which came in my mind is also we don't have to think about so much what only we can do as URI. I think that the dimension must be what are examples of best practice somewhere outside of URI, and to use their expertise and to implement it in the URI. That's one thing. The other thing is what I mentioned in my presentation. Is about interdisciplinary learning. I think that's a very strong impact, and to think more holistic, and to think bring different forms of expertise of cognitions together. And I think that would be the best if this would be really like an open process. But then again, it's a question of the structure. There is, so far I know, no interdisciplinary course of URI, which allow maybe students really to switch from one course to another course.
It's interesting because you could have different disciplinary bound approaches to solving problems or solving the same problem. And people, I think students could learn a lot from that kind of effort.
Well, I think that there's a trend towards becoming more interdisciplinary, but it's going much more slowly than originally planned. But for instance, I know originally environmental stuff, let's say, was mainly out of cells or maybe some oceanography. But I think that increasingly now it's engineering, business, communication, psychology, so it is branching out, and I think it's one of the things that we've been trying to do with this group is to build more connections, and even though it is a slow process, but it is a process.
I think actually, Norbert, you
started to think, as I'm sitting here, sort of listening to the discussion, it basically occurred to me that everything you said here is essentially the canon of the cooperative extension literature. I mean, we hit the 4-H, we hit all the sort of the maintenance of the highliner. But what's interesting is that the language is slightly different, and I think that get-togethers like this and discussions like this, it's helpful. I mean, yeah.
Good.
I agree.
So, maybe we can go on one more round of concluding statements, and then I think we've had an excellent presentation and discussions, and I'd like to thank our presenters and Martin in particular, and we hope to see all of you on our various upcoming things, and then we hope that this whole idea will continue into the future beyond Earth Day, maybe, so looking forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.